Of all the great reservoirs in California, there is one that acts as a kind of early warning system, a bellwether that reveals the state of a drought faster and more dramatically than almost any other. It is Folsom Lake, the reservoir on the American River just outside Sacramento, and it has a reputation for something that both fascinates and terrifies the people who watch it. When drought comes to California, Folsom Lake does not decline slowly and gently like some of the larger reservoirs. It plunges. It drops with startling speed, its blue waters retreating to reveal a cracked and barren moonscape, and at its lowest points, it has fallen to levels so extreme that they seem almost impossible for a lake that, in good years, is a sparkling playground full of boats and swimmers. Picture the nightmare scenario that has haunted the region during its worst droughts, a scenario that has come frighteningly close to reality more than once. Folsom Lake dropping toward just a small fraction of its capacity, its vast basin nearly emptied, the water shrinking to a shadow of its former self. And with it, the specter of something California's big cities have long dreaded, the imposition of serious water rationing, with a major city forced to sharply restrict how much water its residents can use, because the reservoir it leans on has fallen too low to meet the ordinary demand. It is the kind of event that turns an abstract worry about drought into an immediate, personal reality for hundreds of thousands of people. In this video, we are going to explore Folsom Lake and why it is such a dramatic barometer of California's water fortunes. We will look at how a reservoir can fall so far so fast, at the eerie things that emerge from its depths when it does, and at what it would mean for the city that depends on it if the water dropped to critical lows and rationing became necessary. We will examine the forces that drive these dramatic swings, the history of the lake's most alarming declines, and what its behavior tells us about the fragile balance of water in the region. Stay with me, because the story of this shrinking, swelling, unpredictable lake is a window into the water future of California and the millions who live in its shadow. Hashtag the lake that rises and falls like no other to understand why Folsom Lake commands so much attention. You first have to understand what makes it different from many other reservoirs. Folsom is a reservoir on the American River created by a dam not far from the city of Sacramento, and it serves multiple vital purposes. It provides water to communities in the region. It helps control flooding along the river. It generates electricity. And it offers recreation to enormous numbers of people who come to its shores to boat, fish, and escape the heat. It is, in the good times, a beloved and beautiful asset, a jewel of the region set among the rolling hills. But Folsom Lake has a particular characteristic that sets it apart and makes it so volatile, compared to some of the truly massive reservoirs in the state, which hold such enormous volumes that they act as vast, slow-moving savings accounts able to weather several dry years. Folsom is smaller and more responsive to the immediate conditions. Its watershed, the area of land that drains into it, depends heavily on the snow and rain of a particular mountain region, and its level responds quickly to the fortunes of that watershed. When a good winter delivers abundant snow and rain, Folsom can fill rapidly, sometimes swelling from low to high in a remarkably short time. But when a dry winter fails to deliver, the lake can just as quickly fall, and in a sustained drought, it can drop to shockingly low levels far faster than the giant reservoirs elsewhere in the state. This is what makes Folsom such a dramatic barometer. Because it rises and falls so quickly, it shows the effects of drought vividly and early, its shoreline retreating dramatically while larger reservoirs are still slowly declining. When Californians want a stark visual sense of how bad a drought has become, they often look to Folsom, where the water level tells the story in the most graphic terms possible. And in the worst droughts, that story has been alarming indeed, with the lake falling to levels that transform it from a full and vibrant reservoir into a vast muddy basin ringed by exposed earth, a shocking sight that captures the severity of the crisis in a single glance. Hashtag when the water vanishes when Folsom Lake drops to its most extreme lows, something remarkable and eerie happens. The retreating water reveals a hidden world that normally lies submerged far beneath the surface, a landscape that has been drowned for a long time and that emerges, ghostly and strange, only when the drought is at its most severe. It is one of the most haunting and fascinating aspects of the lake's dramatic declines, and it has drawn attention and wonder whenever it occurs. Before the reservoir was created, before the dam held back the river and filled the basin, there was a landscape there, a place where people had lived and worked in an earlier era. When the lake was filled, that landscape was submerged, hidden beneath the waters. But when the lake falls to its lowest levels, remnants of that lost world reappear, emerging from the mud as the water pulls back. Old foundations, the traces of structures, and other relics of the past come back into the sunlight after having been hidden beneath the water. A ghostly reminder of what existed before the reservoir. It is as if the drought peels back the surface of the present to reveal a buried past, a drowned history that only the most severe conditions can expose. This phenomenon is more than just a curiosity. It is a vivid and sobering measure of just how far the water has fallen. When these long submerged features emerge, it means the lake has dropped to a level rarely seen, an extreme that signals a drought of serious proportions. The reappearance of the drowned landscape becomes a symbol of the crisis, a striking image that conveys the severity of the situation in a way that numbers alone never could. And it serves as a stark reminder that the lake we see in normal times, full and blue and inviting, sits atop a hidden world, and that the water we take for granted can retreat far enough to expose the ghosts beneath. When Folsom reveals its secrets, it is telling the region that the drought has grown grave. Hashtag, the threat of rationing the falling of Folsom Lake is not merely a matter of dramatic scenery and emerging relics. It carries a very real and serious threat for the people and communities that depend on the reservoir for their water, and that threat is the prospect of rationing. Because Folsom is a significant source of water for its region when the lake falls to critically low levels. The ability to supply water to homes and businesses comes under strain, and the authorities may be forced to impose restrictions on how much water people can use. Water rationing is one of the most direct and personal ways that a drought reaches into people's daily lives. In its milder forms, it means restrictions on outdoor water use, limits on watering lawns and gardens, washing cars, and other non-essential uses, along with calls for voluntary conservation. But in more severe forms, rationing can mean much stricter mandatory limits, sharp reductions in how much water each household is allowed to use, with penalties for those who exceed their allotment. For a major city to be pushed towards serious rationing is a significant event, a sign that the water situation has become genuinely critical, and it forces residents to confront the reality of scarcity in a way that comfortable abundance never does. The prospect of a major city near Folsom being forced into serious rationing because the lake has fallen too low is exactly the kind of scenario that water managers work desperately to avoid and that residents dread. It would mean that the ordinary assumption that water will always flow freely from the tap in whatever quantity is desired could no longer be taken for granted. It would mean changing habits, sacrificing the green lawns and the long showers and the easy abundance, and living within the hard limits of a diminished supply. And it would serve as a powerful wake-up call, a reminder that even in a wealthy, modern region, the water that sustains daily life is ultimately dependent on the rain and the snow, and on a reservoir that can fall frighteningly low when those fail. When Folsom drops toward critical levels, the threat of rationing moves from a distant possibility to an immediate concern, and the region braces for the hard choices that scarcity demands. Hashtag, why the lake falls so far. To understand why Folsom Lake can fall to such alarming lows, you have to understand the forces that drive its dramatic swings, because they reveal a great deal about the nature of water in California. The fundamental driver, as with so many water crises, is drought, the failure of the rain, and especially the snow that feed the reservoir. But Folsom's particular vulnerability to drought comes down to its size and its dependence on a specific and variable water source. California's water, in large part, comes from the snow that falls in its mountains during the winter, building up a great frozen reservoir that melts through the spring and summer to feed the rivers and fill the reservoirs. Folsom depends heavily on this mountain snow and the rain of its watershed, and in a good year, when the winter storms are generous, the snow and rain deliver an abundant flow that fills the lake, sometimes with remarkable speed. But California's climate is notoriously variable, prone to swinging between wet years and dry years, and when a dry winter arrives, the snow and rain fail to materialize. The flow into the lake dwindles, and yet the demand for water continues. Because Folsom is relatively small and responsive, it feels the effects quickly, its level dropping fast as the water is drawn out faster than it can be replaced. There is also the matter of how the water is managed and demanded. The reservoir must serve multiple, sometimes competing purposes, providing water supply. Controlling floods, generating power, and supporting the environment and recreation, and balancing these demands during a drought is a delicate and difficult task. As the population of the region grows, the demand for water grows with it, placing ever more pressure on a supply that the drought is simultaneously shrinking. And the same hot, dry conditions that starve the inflows also increase evaporation, pulling water directly off the surface of the lake. All of these forces together reduce supply, steady or growing demand, and increase losses, combine to drive the dramatic declines that make Folsom such a stark barometer of drought. When the conditions align against it, the lake can fall with a speed and to a depth that shocks even those who have watched it for years. Hashtag, a history of alarming lows. This is not a merely theoretical danger, because Folsom Lake has a documented history of falling to genuinely alarming lows during California's worst droughts, and each time it has, the images have shocked the public and underscored the severity of the crisis. In the depths of the most severe dry spells the region has endured in recent memory, the lake has plunged to a small fraction of its capacity, its waters retreating dramatically to expose vast expanses of the basin floor and, at the very worst, to reveal the drowned relics of the past that normally lie hidden far below. These episodes have become part of the lore of California drought, moments when the shrinking of this one reservoir came to symbolize the plight of the entire region. Photographs of a nearly emptied Folsom, of boats stranded on dry ground, of the cracked and barren lake bed stretching out where a full reservoir should have been, have circulated widely and lodged themselves deep in the public memory as the very face of drought. And each time, the lake's dramatic decline has served as a warning, a vivid demonstration of how quickly and how far the water can fall when the winters turn dry and the drought digs in. Hashtag, the bellwether for California Folsom Lake's dramatic behavior makes it more than just a local concern, because it serves as a bellwether, an early and vivid indicator of the broader water situation across California. When Folsom falls dramatically, it is often a sign that a serious drought is taking hold, one that will, in time, affect the larger reservoirs and the wider water system as well. In this sense, watching Folsom is like watching the canary in the coal mine, a sensitive early indicator that reveals trouble before it becomes fully apparent elsewhere. This is why the fortunes of this one reservoir attract so much attention, and why its most dramatic declines become symbols of California's water struggles as a whole. The images of a nearly empty Folsom, its basin exposed and its relics emerging, become emblematic of the drought, appearing in the news and the public consciousness as the face of the crisis. And when Folsom recovers, filling rapidly after a wet winter, that too becomes a symbol, a hopeful sign that the drought may be easing. The lake's rapid swings make it a kind of living gauge of the state's water health, its rise and fall telling the story of California's endless dance between drought and abundance in the most visible possible terms. But being a bellwether also means that Folsom's troubles are a warning of troubles to come for the wider region. The same drought that empties Folsom quickly will, if it persists, eventually strain the entire water system, drawing down the great reservoirs, cutting the supplies that cities and farms depend on, and forcing the difficult choices that scarcity demands across the state. Folsom simply shows it first and most dramatically. So when the lake falls toward critical lows and the threat of rationing looms over the city that depends on it, it is not just a local emergency. It is a signal, a preview, a warning to all of California that the water on which everything depends is once again running short, and that the hard times of drought have returned. Hashtag, living with an uncertain lake, so Folsom Lake continues its dramatic dance, rising and falling with the fortunes of the winters, a barometer of drought and abundance for a region and a state that watch it closely. Its capacity to plunge to alarming lows, revealing the drowned world beneath, and raising the specter of rationing for the city that leans on it, makes it one of the most closely observed reservoirs in the West, a place where the abstract statistics of drought become vividly, unmistakably real. When Folsom falls, everyone can see it, and everyone understands what it means. The lesson of Folsom Lake is ultimately a lesson about the fragility and variability of water in California, about a region that depends for its very existence on the unreliable generosity of winter storms and mountain snow, and that must live with the reality that in the dry years, the water can retreat frighteningly far. It is a reminder that the full and sparkling lake of the good times is not a permanent guarantee, but a temporary blessing, and that the same basin can, in the space of a drought, become a barren expanse of cracked earth. The people who live around Folsom and the city that depends on it must reckon with this uncertainty, must prepare for the dry years even in the wet ones, and must never take for granted the water that fills the lake and flows from their taps. Whether Folsom is full or low at any given moment, the deeper truth remains the same. California is a land of water extremes, of drought and flood, of abundance and scarcity, and Folsom Lake, more than almost any other place, puts that truth on vivid display. Its dramatic swings are a constant reminder that the water future of the region is uncertain, that scarcity is always only a dry winter or two away, and that the wise course is to respect the limits of a variable supply and to plan for the hard times before they arrive. The lake will rise again after it falls, and fall again after it rises, but each dramatic decline carries the same enduring message. Water in California is precious and precarious, and the day the reservoir runs low and the taps must be rationed is never as far away as it seems in the years of plenty. Folsom Lake and its endless rising and falling will keep telling that story for as long as the region